Hey, what's going, y'all? It is yours truly once again. Now, in regards to, when you want to actually make something, build something, you usually need raw materials to put those things together or to have something to build with, per se. In regards to the feminine gender, well, there's not a lot of raw material amongst them left in this day and age. But, kind of like with certain materials, raw materials, one may say, well, you may have to go to the other side of the world if you want to try to find a way to get a certain precious metal or certain raw materials that you can't find in your area. And the same could be so with the feminine gender in many ways. Maybe one has to go to another part of the world to get that particular raw material or precious metal. But one needs to have certain other skills, I believe, in regards to dealing with the feminine gender, just as someone that does, just as it is with someone that does a lot of metallurgy or someone that works with metals. Or at least someone that they understand metals, per se, because maybe you can't find raw material, but you can still find a way to extract more out of existing material. So in regards to the feminine gender, I see it no differently. Now, of course, yours truly doesn't do manipulation. So the way I'm trying to extract more material out of the feminine gender is through molding instead of manipulation, in which that I did a video previously talking about my thoughts on manipulation. This is the continuation. Look in the comment section below if you want to check out the previous video, if you have not checked that video out yet. Now, I bring up metal, but the thing is in many ways, the degree of how rough, how tough, or how hard that metal is per se, really it doesn't matter. It could even be soft, maybe more pliable, but it means that metal could be probably more brittle, more fragile. It kind of breaks apart in your hand. All that represents trauma. You may have certain metals that have been too stressed to where you can't do anything with it. Maybe it's too rusted out, too oxidized, so it just falls apart when you pick up that metal. It falls right through your hand. And you have other metals that are basically you can't do anything with, upon you trying to extract more out of it, given that it was previously manipulated to the point of where it's pretty much, as far as the periodic table is concerned, it's used up. It's been fully extracted, if that makes sense to somebody. Now, in regards to manipulation, I brought up different types of manipulation in the previous video. One video, my bad, y'all. One type of manipulation was a weld. The second type was a screw or a drill. Screw and drill, pretty much the same thing. So basically twisting into a metal. Then you have melting, that's another type of manipulation. And then electrolysis. But I didn't further break down these 4 different types of manipulation upon metals or upon a set feminine gender, depending on her development, whether she has reached womanhood or she's still very far from it. Okay. Now, the thing usually with manipulation is, it's all about forming a bond. Since I don't do manipulation, I see it as more so a negative connotation, and more or less the type of bond it really is one based on trauma. Hence, some people say trauma bond, but no. A bond itself is based on trauma, regardless. It took trauma. It took stresses. When you forge a metal, that's a stress, so that's actually another form of a manipulation. That's actually a fifth form of a manipulation. Now that I think about it, because you have a weld, okay, and then you have the screw or the drill, which is basically twisting. You have the melting, you have the electrolysis, and now I just mentioned the forging, okay? I'll mention forging last since I just brought that up in regards to manipulation, okay? But welding, how this can be done unto the feminine gender in regards to manipulation. Well, the welding is done emotionally, okay? So welding represents everything emotional, so kind of when you're putting something together, like the way it's welded. So you try to put together a lot of different things as far as different types of traumas and drama in order to kind of mess with her emotions to where she kind of get used to that being the way things are going to be. And then usually after that, it can be pretty much sequential. After that, she gets penetrated, so that's part of that screw and drill aspect of manipulation. The screw and the drill, or the twisting into the twisting into. And then after that, screw and drill, based on the twisting into, you got her screwed up. So she's all messed up in the head now, right? And then, there are other forms, which is the melting, and that represents the abuse. You get her to melt, you break her down, you break down her properties, based on the periodic table of element. Yeah, you break down her elemental properties, literally, because you got her out of her element based on how you've been manipulating her, okay? And then the electrolysis, the final part, and that's usually the spiritual, to where she's like, when I say electrolysis, that usually means shock. So that's what happens, like when they're trying to get rid of rust, they're trying to shock the metal, literally. But in this case, it has the opposite effect. After you have a sense of electrolysis towards a feminine gender, she's just going to respond by saying, I'm all shook up, you got her shocked. So she's all shooked up now, Now, the fifth part that I guess I can add to this whole aspect of manipulation, the forging, is when you just put her in a fire. And usually what I mean by putting her through the fire is you just treat her just cold, like not treat her cold because, we talking about heat. But I guess in this sense, what I mean is you just mean towards her. You don't show her any kind of sympathy or empathy. But maybe that's what she eventually gravitates to over time. Like, and I see this all the time, with a lot of abusive situations, because I mentioned abuse earlier, but it's not the same as far as just ridicule. Ridicule can seem as a form of abuse, but abuse is usually cruel behavior that happens over and over again. That's when it becomes abuse. Ridiculing, it's more or less just how you gaslight a person, you yell at them, and you can do that one time and that can have an effect on a person instantly. But if you do that multiple times, then it becomes something very abusive to where it eventually melts her. So literally you're forging, or you're yelling, or you're ridiculing of her. Your forging will eventually melt her in the form of that abuse. Man, I know that went over some of y'all head. It kind of went over my head when I said it, but it's real deep like that. Okay. But I don't want to spend too much time on that. I'm going to get on my final points, and maybe I'll come back to this forging aspect in regards to manipulation. But let's get on to the other aspect, because I need to talk about what yours truly does. As I've mentioned before, I don't manipulate, I mold. Okay. Because I said previously with manipulation, it causes a bond. And when you mold something, it causes something to form. But see, the thing is, something that was once broken will always be broken. That's something to keep in mind. And, it's just going to be broken. no matter if it's glued together. And some things are broken beyond repair. That's something else to think about, as I kind of alluded to before, as far as certain degrees of a metal, whether it's too brittle or whether it is too extracted to where the metal can't be, dealt with. Like you can't make it malleable, pliable. Okay. Because see, another aspect of manipulation is bending something to your will. Okay. But see, yeah, that's the thing. I don't do none of that. I want to mold things in order for it to be formed. And there is some type of heat that I apply to a set feminine gender myself, but it's not in the sense of ridiculing. It's in a sense of warming her. It's in a sense of making her tough, but from the standpoint of validating. You know, like she knows that she has a wonderful place in my life. She doesn't feel abused. If anything, she feels vindicated. She feels more strengthened by being around me, by receiving my encouragement, you know. But see, there's actually just one way. You know, I gave y'all at least 5 forms of manipulation. However, there's only one type of molding, because it's supposed to be simple between a man and a woman. Okay? That one form of molding is sculpting. That's the only way you can mold something, is by sculpting it. Sculpting a woman, you know, getting her to be shaped a certain way. You know, figuratively speaking, I'm shaping her figure. But this is upon me realizing how broken she could have been initially. But I knew that there was something about her that could still be extracted. Okay. The same is even so with, let's say, glass. I don't know if y'all seen how glass can also be molded or sculpted. And yes, there's heat applied to that glass too, but it's in the sense of making that glass better. It's not in the sense of manipulating that glass. It's not in the sense of actually stressing that glass. It's in a sense of bringing out, like sometimes when you apply heat to glass, you start to see other colors form that wasn't there initially on that glass. So it's like that glass becomes more beautiful with the certain type of heat applied to it. You're enhancing when you're molding, whereas you're breaking down when you're manipulating. That's the difference between the two. But see, my thing is overall with a woman, because I can only do this with a woman, not a female, it's just getting her to be flowed or formed a certain way. You know what I'm saying? It's all about getting her to be formed or having her to flow a certain way. And, you know, not to be controlled at all. I want her to be molded by me to flow and not to feel controlled whatsoever. That's the only way it's going to work. That's why I believe so much in flowing like water. And, you know, it's the simplest thing a man can tell a woman, but most of them never figure it out because most of them have not really gotten to that full womanhood yet to understand a man when he says, we got to flow like water, sweetie. Because she's so used to not really flowing like water. That's what it all comes down to. You know, she's not used to flowing like water. And there's a lot more to say to this, because some acts of flowing can be not water. It could be lava, flow like lava. But see, let's say if a feminine gender is like lava instead of water. Well, it's this idea that before she forms into something hard, I'm still trying to find a way to sculpt her while she's still a little bit hot. Maybe when she's flowing my way and she's hot like that lava, she's coming to me in a sense of, the other RayJ, can you please look out for me? I've been through a lot of crap. I just went through all this crap and manipulation. But can you mold me right now while I'm malleable and pliable? And yours truly got no problem with that. Signing out.